In addressing Canada's role in Afghanistan, we've really worked to focus attention on what we have called and what some of the speakers on the earlier panel called the militarization or the securitization of aid. In essence, we've argued that the security agenda of the U.S. and its allies in Afghanistan, and in that I include Canada, is skewing, number one, where aid is spent, both within Afghanistan and globally. Number two, what aid is spent on. And number three, how aid is being delivered. These trends are problematic not only because they divert aid from its intended purposes of relieving suffering and eradicating poverty, but also because aid has become a powerful instrument to strengthen the military and public relations campaigns for the war, both within Canada and in Afghanistan on the ground. I believe that this critique of the aid component complements a larger critique of Canada's military involvement in Afghanistan. In talking about global resources for poverty eradication and development, it's important to start with a reminder that resources globally are being put even more disproportionately than normal into military and armaments, that in 2004, for the first time since the end of the Cold War, military spending globally exceeded US $1 trillion, and that, as an example, the US spends 76 times more for its war in Iraq than total ODA, that's official development assistance, for health. It spends 196 times more compared to education, and 480 times more what it allocates to water and sanitation worldwide. And that's just on the war in Iraq. So just, setting the frame for the issue of how aid is being spent, it's important to remember that what is being spent on aid is a tiny little fraction that has been put aside for poverty eradication, and that is not even being spent on poverty eradication. On the first issue of where aid is being spent, major global shifts since 2001 in where aid is being spent. From 2000 to 2004, $10 billion of the $27 billion in new aid resources globally, so that's roughly a third of new aid resources globally, have been spent in Iraq and Afghanistan. Donors, including Canada, are explicit in their reasons for this, mentioning global security and national security obligations and priorities above poverty and need being principal considerations, which of course should be the deciding factors in allocating aid. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, from the viewpoint of aid supporting the war effort, is the way aid is being spent in Afghanistan. You may have seen the recent articles in various Canadian papers announcing the launch of a new aid program in Afghanistan that's called the Confidence in Government Program. And in the articles, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Doucette, who is with the Canadian Provincial Reconstruction Team in Afghanistan, quoted now famously, at least in my office, that development assistance is a useful counterinsurgency tool in Afghanistan. The comments put a real spotlight on ongoing controversy about aid in Afghanistan since the U.S.-led invasion in 2001. Throughout the war, the delivery of aid by and in close coordination with coalition forces has put people at serious risk. The Provincial Reconstruction Teams, or PRTs, established throughout the country to support the central government, are units designed to combine aid efforts with military mission. The major aid program operating out of Canada's PRT, which I just mentioned, which is the CEDA's Confidence in Government program, is publicly described as providing aid to communities that commit to cooperating with coalition forces to oust the Taliban. The idea is to weaken the Taliban by rewarding communities allying with the coalition forces. When aid strengthens the military objectives of one side in the war, aid becomes a weapon, and those who use it, both those who deliver it and those who receive it, become targets. By essentially recruiting communities to side with Canada in the war against the Taliban, we are involving these communities in the war, but we can't protect them. If we systematically link the delivery of aid to the military offensive against al-Qaeda and the Taliban, we make targets of communities that benefit from that aid. and there are others in the room who are better experts than I are. I don't consider myself an expert on the Geneva Conventions, but this, in many views, is in violation of the spirit of the Geneva Conventions to deliver aid neutrally, and also in violation of the Geneva Conventions separation between combatant and non-combatant, and that in fact we're blurring the lines between who is a combatant in this war and who is not. So to address these issues, assistance delivered by government or non-governmental bodies should not be tied to military strategy, either explicitly or implicitly.